Robin, aka Supermassive, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to chat with you. And to get us started, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. I was running through your LinkedIn, and there's things that go from you're a filmmaker, you're a creative director at Harmony, the blockchain protocol. You worked at Popcorn Brain, or still do, Defiant, etc. So you just take me through it.
Well, I love that you use "I was a filmmaker." I still am a filmmaker.
You are.
And that's actually important because I've spent 25 years of my life getting good at it. And it's one of those things where, if you're good at a skill, you should probably use that to earn a living, or at least build that into something where you're asking people to spend a lot of money on assets and support you. You should be good at what you do. And filmmaking is that thing. I was actually, before I was a filmmaker, I was a musician. I was a chorister in a choir. I was the leader of the orchestra. I was literally that Bandcamp geek. I know it's hard to imagine now. And that was where my destiny was going. But basically when I turned 17, I said, this isn't enough. I'm not doing that anymore. And film always seemed like this impossible dream. Back then, we're talking late 90s. That's how old I am. It kind of was. You had to shoot on film. Digital was terrible. You couldn't edit on a home PC, but Apple changed all of that. They made it possible for you to edit on your own PC and edit video, which seems so obvious now. But back then it was a really big deal. And I was this generation of kind of young filmmakers that were brought up under this digital new paradigm. And that's kind of interesting to see where we are now, where content is basically you just have a phone and you can make stuff. The lessons I had to learn and the way I had to take crap digital signals and turn them into something that was vaguely watchable have never left me. And it's still that same discipline. It was like, how do we hack the system? How do we hack the cameras? How do we hack this material so that it is able to make us compete with people who have, 10, 100 times the budget that we do? And now it's just a battle of how do we compete with mega brands that have mega budgets and can outspend you and have all this out muscle. But it boils down to the fact that if you can tell a great story, you can cut through anything. And it's this most incredible scalpel at our disposal to be heard, but it can only work if you can actually tell a good story. And I think we're going to get back onto that. So the last 25 years of my life have been this insane journey through all the different types of production that are out there. Normally you kind of specialize in commercials or music videos. I've done everything. I've done horrible reality TV. I started out making karaoke videos. So when you go to a karaoke bar, there's a video playing behind it. Chances are you saw my mug because I was in a bunch of these. We made them for £300 a day. But that's film school right there. That's how you learn, just trying stuff out. It doesn't really matter. And that's kind of the world we're in right now with TikTok. You just post a TikTok, try something, it doesn't work, doesn't matter. Next day, everyone's forgotten about it. And worked my way up through corporate, did wedding videos. And then I got myself into a position where I could make a feature film. Feature film's like this holy grail for anyone who wants to be in film. If you've made a feature film, you've kind of done it. But at a certain point you go, yeah, but now I have to make another one. And then you kind of realize slowly that things are changing and they're moving towards YouTube. And there's this new kind of audience gathering mechanism that is there. And you don't fit there because you spent the last 15 years getting really good at the thing that would allow you to compete for the budgets that ad agencies had, all the while realizing that the world is changing. And now 10 years later, I'm looking back and going, holy crap, it really did change. And now I'm part of it. But for a long time, I resisted it. I didn't want to be there. So what I did was I said, I'm a creative. This is what I do. I went to work for a company in Amsterdam shooting commercials. So I was shooting 3 or 4 commercials a month and I kind of made it. Doing beautiful work, soulless, uncreative, agency-driven work where I was basically just a factory drone, able to go on set, deliver a product, everyone's happy, budget's happy, go home. And I just got to a point where I hated it. And so I made this really distinct decision to go and do something else. I got into crypto around 2017 and I discovered this company, Harmony. It's a layer 1 sharding protocol, doing some really exciting things. It was really interesting. And for some reason, I just reached out to them and said, listen, I think you've got a really interesting story here. Maybe I could be the one to tell it. Took a year of going backwards and forwards with them, talking about a possible documentary idea. And then I was just basically in a position to go out to San Francisco and meet them. pitched them an idea in the room. And then a month later, I was hired by them as their creative director, just taking this sudden right turn. And like, you and I both know that in this crazy world, you never go full crypto. It's like when everything's bullish and crazy and everything's going up, you go, yeah, I just want to do full-time crypto. And then everything crashes down to ground. And you realize that it's a really bad idea. So I went full crypto in 2018 in a bear market and went to work for Harmony, which was such a lesson. It was a lesson in what it takes to build a layer one. It was a lesson in what it takes to be a project which had its entire community turn against it and was just eating itself alive. It was a lesson in what happens when there's a malicious attack and suddenly all the devs have to kind of fix what had happened and get the network back online. And it was a lesson in whether there was an appetite for stories or storytelling in crypto. Because I was telling the story of Harmony and I was trying to be creative with it and nobody wanted that. And yet we kind of found a way to start delivering that to people by shooting for the Defiant. So we started to do this series with the Defiant, which was a look at DeFi and what DeFi was doing. Because this was when DeFi was blowing up, getting big. And DeFi, contrarily, was back then really fun. It isn't now, but it was back then really, really fun. It was basically what NFTs became. And it was just the wildest, stupidest, craziest stories, the wackiest people, the most degenerate. And the stories that were coming out was so insane. We thought, well, you could cover this like Bloomberg covers it, which is very straight, dry. It's a guy in a suit. Well, there's that kind of thing. And we're like, nah, we're not going to do that. So I just started doing stuff like when the Curve token launched, it was completely bananas. So I was like, well, I'm just going to tell the story with bananas. And I get hit in the face with a banana or I'd eat a banana. So I was using these very memey tools to tell the story of DeFi and people loved it. And so we just kept doubling down on that and doing the wildest, weirdest, wackiest things. And then at a certain point, Camilla, who runs the Defiant, said, listen, I think you're wasted at Harmony. You think you should come and work for me? And I was like, yes, please. So that was the start of an adventure, trying to build a YouTube channel in crypto, trying to understand how you do that, trying to understand how to be a YouTuber in a space where I didn't want to be responsible for anybody losing money. And so you have to have this very careful line between what you are enthusiastic about and how much people are then going to go and use what you say as a purchasing motivator, which was tough, honestly. And so, yeah, I always struggled with that one. And so basically what I did was I just didn't respond to comments and I kept things at arm's length. And I didn't do the thing that YouTubers can really do to their maximum advantage, which is bring an audience very much into their circle and close to them. And that's the way of the world these days. You want to be close to the influencer, to the person that you're in touch with, but I didn't do any of that. And yet we were still able to grow the channel over 100,000 subscribers. And along the way, demonstrate that you could be wild and weird, tell a story, find an interesting way to tell a story. I mean, the schedule we were on was nuts. We were doing 6 videos a week, a live stream. The Friday video was usually about half an hour. So there's a lot of content. And we'd always try and do like the first minute and a half of something like a cold open that was kind of interesting and creative. But you get to a point where it's just really difficult to find new things to say and a new way to say them, particularly when you're always shooting in the same environment. And I just burnt out, to be honest. It just took it out of me. And I felt like there was the need to do something different, need to do something new. And I've always been creative, always been excited by this space. And when NFTs blew up and PFPs blew up, I knew that in there somewhere was the opportunity for me to use this space as a platform to launch, I guess, a creative studio that would allow me to do all the things that I've always wanted to do, tell the stories in the way that I wanted to tell them. But the really weird thing in all of this was I never expected to be in front of the camera. I had spent the vast majority of my career not being in front of the camera. And so to step in front has been a bit strange for a number of reasons. One of which is it's just a bit weird, right? You stand in front of a camera and you talk to nobody, but it's an audience that's sort of over there and like you share stuff and you kind of send your stuff out into the world. But the second thing is I'm a director. I got really good at directing. I got really good at editing. Like there's nothing worse than seeing your own mug on the screen and going, oh God, did I really say that? Did I really do that? Which you get over. And then like just being in front of the camera and knowing that I would shoot things a certain way if I was holding the camera myself. I would want the control over the monitor to be able to polish up, like to be able to spot, okay, there's a box over there, that's in the shot. We can fix that, but I can't do that from in front of the camera. So I have to trust everyone else that they can do it. And it's one of the hardest challenges for me is to maintain like directorial discipline, that directorial quality that I want from the work that we do. But actually just allow YouTube style filmmaking, which is a bit looser and a bit shonkier, to have its place in what we do as well. It's a really tough balancing act. And I struggle with it every time we pick up a camera to shoot something. It's like the old me and the new me. The new me is like, don't worry about it. And the old me is like, but it's the thing that makes me good. It's the thing that sets me apart from everybody else. Does that answer your question?
Love it. Love it. All right. So the common thread here is definitely storytelling. Like, you are an incredible storyteller. I want to dive into like how and what that even is. But before that, when you first, because you were making these incredible films and commercials and karaoke videos, especially, but what was like the interest in crypto? Because your evolution was similar to my evolution, where you went from, okay, crypto is really exciting, and then DeFi, oh, that's very interesting, and now NFTs. So tell me about that evolution of your interest in this ecosystem, and where are you headed now?
Okay, so it's really, really simple. There comes a point, if you do what I do, particularly the way I used to do it, which is making films makes you poor. And there comes a point where you look at what you're doing and you try and figure out whether it's actually worth it anymore. Is it worth struggling to get a feature film off the ground when it's 2 years of your life and you probably won't see a penny from it? Is that worth it? That question comes into sharp focus when you have kids. The issue is that my wife, who is actually sitting over there, had probably just about had enough of me chasing dreams and wanted me to get real with what I was doing and actually build something where, we could earn some money for a pension. We could have some stability in our lives, because I was always freelance, going off to jobs. Maybe it was 2 months at a time, maybe it wasn't. And I realized that I had to change that. And so what happens, we moved to Holland, where there was more prospect of a better kind of life for the kids, for us, more stability. And this is why I ended up taking a job in Amsterdam. It just so happens that Holland, and particularly Amsterdam, is a hotbed of crypto activity. And my boss, bless him, had bought Ethereum in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, and had made a fortune. And we just happened to be on a drive down to Belgium for a job. And he told me about this thing. Then my brother-in-law also mentioned it, and something triggered in me. And what I realized was the stress I was under, the feeling of sort of helplessness and stupidity, was A, a midlife crisis, and B, I was looking at a problem that was the wrong problem. So I was seeing money as a problem, but actually what I was seeing was not having enough money was the problem. And it was constantly like, how do I transform my career from where I am, which is shooting vacuum cleaner commercials, coffee commercials, soulless crap, into the place where I can do the creative thing that I really want to do and show people what I'm actually capable of? The answer is I'd have to make an entirely new reel of work, which would probably cost in the hundreds of thousands to produce to the level I wanted it to, and would take me 2 years. I was like, I can't do that. So I saw crypto in the way that many people see it, which is a way to earn a lot of money very quickly. And I just took to it like a duck to water because, as you say, it's all storytelling. And that was the thing that I could understand. I know how to research stuff and I know how to follow the narrative. And I just loved it. Because I was like, wow, this is a game that I can play and win. And obviously this is 2017. So any old schmuck could play that game and win. But I realized that, whatever my performance in the markets, the thing that was really powerful was that I had a skill set that was valuable, but nobody realized it yet. And I realized that if I could sort of figure out a way to convince people of the importance of that, then I'd be onto something here, and I could potentially. And I think it's probably when I saw, might have been CryptoKitties, but it was the NFT token standard. When I saw that back in 2017, I was like, this solves so many things that I'm struggling with in this space, but I didn't know how to do anything with it at that point. And so that was when I just, realized that the appeal of this and the craziness of it was a good match for me, and I was going to stick around with it. And And that's how it happened, basically.
So do you see, because yeah, my evolution was more about like, okay, crypto is going to change the financial system, and then it evolved into, oh, it can actually, blockchain can be used for a lot of different applications, not just finance, and then it evolved into, oh, NFTs, they can be used for so many more things, and it's going to have, real world impact on everyday people. And so there is this evolution of okay, it's used for one thing to, oh, it's widely applicable, it's going to impact everybody. And now I call that kind of the metaverse. The metaverse is kind of this all encompassing thing. Is that where you think we're headed, in the sense of, or is that a similar thought process that you have when you're like, oh, I can now be creative to my fullest extent because crypto, Web3, NFTs are now basically encompassing all different industries?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever really sat down and rationalized it too much. That, for better or for worse, has always been my modus operandi. I try not to think too much now, not to overanalyze things, because there's a kind of gut instinct in things which says it's over there. And I've learned to trust that now, because if you get into that analysis paralysis thing, particularly like making videos for YouTube, you can't, because it will get in your way and it'll hamper you. You're much better off just going, it's over there. And that's kind of what I saw with the metaverse. And it wasn't really on my radar. I was kind of not that excited about so-called metaverse platforms, because every time I turned up in there, I was just like, I don't get it. And I don't want to be here, really. But then slowly that idea kind of gets into you, and you start to understand that Web3, crypto, all these ideas are slaves to Bitcoin, first and foremost. They're slaves to a flip-flopping narrative that they can't escape. But they're also not the main event. The main event is so much bigger. And it's when you then start thinking about all these kind of weird trends. Like, we assume Google, Facebook, Apple are monolithic and they're forever. But if you start to think, well, maybe they're not, and we'll get into this with AI, then everything's up for grabs, right? The hegemony of the US dollar, up for grabs. Crypto has opened that debate. Whether it'll win it or not is a different thing. The metaverse is just going to completely change the way everything happens. And it's not because I'm a genius and I see it. It's because I look at my kids who are 8 and 10 and how they interact with Roblox, and they're already metaverse native. They get it, but they don't think at all the way we do. They're not groomed in social media and Facebook and all these other things. They've got a different viewpoint on the world. And if they're the ones that are going to be driving the way we interact with technology, because young people always do, then it's going to be a completely different story. Like, you assume that we will always have phones, but I don't think we will. Like, what's after this? Where does it go next? This format of doing things, I think it's on the way out. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around why, but actually this is ridiculous. This is a stupid device. And it's not evolving at all. It's not changing. This iPhone is exactly the same as the iPhone 3 generations before. What changed? Not a lot. So once you start thinking like that, it's like, okay, we really are in a place. I have this book. I don't know if you have this book. I'm sure you do.
I do.
It's very dry. It's a hard read. It's very, it's not like a Yuval Noah Harari kind of book. It's like, this is the thing, but like, read this and then it all makes sense, as dry as it is.
All right. So storytelling. Is there a formula to? So I mean, you're an absolutely like god tier storyteller. Me, not.
Okay,
right.
I'm going to challenge you on that. Why do you think that?
I don't. So I want to ask you, like, what makes a good story? Just because I see your content that you created, it's incredible, and you're able to keep me engaged and keep me guessing and keep me excited. So what is it about? Is storytelling formulaic? Is like, okay, you need to have the build up, but then like the big event, and then like the down, or like how does it work?
Well, there's a couple of hard questions in there. I think the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you what you think story is, just to define it.
Wow, what a story is?
Yeah.
Define story.
Because if you're that and the fact that you're struggling with that is really it's indicative of where we as commentators on this are at, because everyone loves to talk about storytelling, but if I challenge people to define it, they can't. They know it instinctively, but what it is, that's the problem. So I will challenge you now to define it. And it's okay if you can't.
So a story is a journey told through written, verbal, or audiovisual means.
Did you just Google that?
No, I just made it up. Is that accurate?
Well, okay. So it's no, yes. I mean, you've described how it can be executed, but you haven't described what it is. So storytelling is the craft, and that's absolutely the thing. But when you break it down, like what is story? Because it's different from plot, right? Plot is what happened. Story is different. It feels different. It has a thing. So here's how I define it. And I had try and make it super simple. Setup and payoff. 3 words. That's it. Because what you do is you set something up. Here's a situation. Here's a character. And you know instinctively that something is happening in that situation because it creates drama. And then there's a payoff. The payoff is how you feel. So you have setup and payoff. And that is story. That's all it is. That's why we can have a 10-second commercial that can fill you with as much hope and or despair as a 90-minute film, because it's great storytelling. But if you only remember one thing, there has to be a context and there has to be a resolution of some sort that makes you feel something. And if you can do that, then it's story. Now, you asked about formulaic. Storytelling is only formulaic if you follow a formula. If you don't follow a formula, then it doesn't have to be. There are certain, let's call them ideas that work really well. YouTubers love to kind of dial into what makes great storytelling because it makes a great video for them. If someone can give you 5 reasons why this storytelling technique works, what you've actually done is created the conditions for somebody else to come along and be an exception, to be different. That's creativity. If you want there to be a formula, if you want to buy Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, I have a copy here at the office, and you want to follow that, then what you are doing is you are adhering to mediocrity. Mediocrity being the idea that everything sits in this very narrow, kind of congested middle state where it's comfortable. Mediocrity is comfortable. That's fine. Don't be exceptional. Just sit in the herd and be decent. What's happened with mediocrity is that through amazing cameras, amazing filters, amazing tools, mediocrity is now very, very good on the surface, on the bit that we can see. So I can buy a great camera, put a great lens on it. I can use a nice light. I'll look pretty good. Does that change the fact that you're still mediocre? Not at all. So what is the difference here? Like, the people I respond to are the ones that look at a formula and go, nah, not today. I'm going to go and be weird and different. Now, you actually have to have a lot of chops, chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to be able to take that route and go through the trial and tribulation of making it stick, because there's no kind of roadmap for that. Going and doing something weird and different has to follow an internal compass, basically, that says you're okay. You're onto something here. And if you're not onto something, then you reject and go away. But that takes time. And nobody in this world right now wants to take the time. And so if you're calling me a great storyteller, it's only because I just do that. And I don't do what everybody else does because I don't care. I'm too old to care anymore. I just want to do the things that make me happy. And if other people like them, then great. And those are the best reasons to get up and keep kind of pushing stuff out every day. But I hope that kind of answers your question.
No, I obviously I'm obsessed with that answer. So I guess like setup and payoff, that's such a simple way to describe it. That's something that is very complex, or can be very complex. I'm trying to think, like, how would I, if I'm like, okay, I want to create some great content, I want to create a story, but there's no formula you mentioned. So it's not like I'm like, okay, I'm going to, I don't know, like there's someone who's in the forest and then they have to go and I don't know, find the apple. I have no idea. But then are you trying to, is the objective to evoke some sort of emotion, whether it be like sadness, happiness, whatever? Like, is that the objective, is to get them to emotionally respond to your story?
That's what you want. Now, if I'm writing a short film or a feature film even, you definitely go into the scripting process with that in mind, that you want to make people cry, you want to make them laugh, these kind of things, and you start to build that into what you're doing, and you can kind of measure the temperature of your script through the different scenes in terms of the emotional weight, the levity, the gravity of each situation. And absolutely you want people to feel something, but that's only words on the page, right? You still have to shoot things, how you shoot things, whether I shoot on a close-up like this or whether I shoot wider, because comedy needs wider lenses, and you know all this stuff. That's great for comedy, but if I'm shooting a drama, I want to get really in close, I might just be here like this. Those kind of things. So that's all directing, right? And then music, or the lack of music, or silence, or photography. You know, a photograph we know can evoke emotion, but film is 25 photographs every second. So you have immense opportunities to frame things in interesting ways. If you have two people here in the frame, that's interesting. But if one of them is really close and one of them's over here and they're faced away, really interesting. That's just staging, that's cinematography. That can also help evoke emotion. So that's much more structurally how we look at narrative fiction or those kind of things. But it doesn't change how you go about things for YouTube, for instance. Now, I land in comedy predominantly because I just find so much of what I cover ridiculous. So to cover it any other way would be ridiculous. So I'm always trying to find the inherent idiocy of what we're doing. And I also don't take myself too seriously. I think it would be ridiculous if I took myself too seriously. So I make jokes and I deflect, I guess, from it looking like I'm taking myself too seriously, because everything I'm covering is so peculiar. So I think it all starts from an internal question, which is, what's the best way to tell this story? And how can I make this interesting? Like a good example from when I was working at the Defiant was we covered the merge, and it was like the most hotly covered topic at the time. Just everyone was covering the merge. I was like, I want to do this, but I want to do it in a really weird way. So I just had this image in my head of two things coming together. And I was like, well, that's interesting, but what if you throw them in a blender? Like, that's really mushing everything together, because there's all this stuff. I was like, that could be a metaphor for something. And then it just became tomatoes. I was like, I'm just going to tell the entire story of the merge using tomatoes, because I think that would be really interesting. And that's what we did. So that's just an example. Now, whether that's the best way to tell that story, I don't know, but it was certainly the best way for me to tell that story. And, sometimes you really struggle with a topic. I remember there was a hack, and it was a really extensive, insane hack. Now, explaining to people what happened during that hack, so boring. And like, you read these Twitter threads and everything going out, and it's just like, I can't follow this. So I basically turned it into a slow jam, and I just improvised over a beat and just sang, and then auto-tuned it. And I was like, that's so me to just do something so idiotically stupid like that. But it's like, I love the things, like that, where it's just that nobody else would have done that. And that makes me happy, because if nobody else would have done it, then I'm still out there being weird, trying new things, and not just applying the latest filter to what we're doing and following the latest trend. So I really struggle with that, because so much of what drives attention or what gets popular, particularly on TikTok and in short form, is tapped into a trend. So I think one of the biggest challenge for us going forward is how to do the trend, but in our own specific and weird and unique way. And I am too stuck in this and having too much fun doing what we're doing now to do it any other way now. So it'll be what it's going to be, but it'll be uniquely me, I think.
Love that. All right, so not including what you're working on now with Based, but what has been your favorite pieces of content that you've created? Like, what is something that you're like, man, I just had a blast doing this. It was amazing. It was shot so well, and the story's amazing. Like, what is that kind of the top?
Yeah, there's been a couple of music videos I've made that were really good. I made one for a band called Feeder, and I'd worked really hard to try and get that gig. Feeder were huge in the UK in like the late... Feeder. They were a rock band, and I really put myself through the ringer trying to do something incredibly technical, using a lot of After Effects and animation and stuff. I guess people don't really know, like, a lot of the time I do all the edits. I used to work with a guy called Alp. We used to sort of share up the edits, but like if there's any motion graphics or any visual effects or anything else, I did those. So I have a kind of background in that. But this was like turning the band into shards that the camera would spin around, and we'd shot on green screen, and it literally, the computer I was on, it could not handle it, and it would just crash the whole time. But then the video came out, it was great. Honestly, like I think the work I've been doing in the last 2 years, the little snippets, is by far the work I'm most proud of. Like, it's easy to kind of look back at your old stuff and go, yeah, it sucked. But I think for like 5 or 6 years, I was pretty much a hack. I was just making stuff and it was fine. There's someone who's like the other half of Supermassive called Simon One, and he and I had a YouTube channel back in 2012 briefly, and we did some parodies of hip hop videos, and we would take the plot of a British soap opera, and then we would do a hip hop video that was using that plot, but it would look exactly like the original hip hop video. So we did like Pharrell, we did Snoop, we did NWA, and like you can go back and see them on my Vimeo channel, but like they look exactly like the originals. But it was telling the plot of this this British soap, and that blew us up, and we got played on British radio. This weird video is played on radio. So that was a fun time, and we were making some cool stuff. But it was kind of like, I guess that was the precursor to Based. All the stuff we were doing, there's so many echoes of that. And then, yeah, I think the work we've been doing and we've been putting out, the trailer we're about to drop for Based, the Fraz. I mean, I'm having more fun now than I've ever had. So I think that's probably why I'm enjoying this and most proud of this, because I guess I made the conditions in which it was possible for me to even do this. And that means a lot.
Awesome. All right. So tell me about Based. It's Based or Based AF?
So it's Based AF. Now, it's an internet term. You know, it got co-opted by the far right, and now it's sort of been brought back to the mainstream. It just means kind of being yourself, being true. And it has this connotation of being like yourself in the face of a lot of opinion in the opposite direction, which I like, which means being contrarian. And the AF means as fuck. So you're based as fuck. So it's like you're based and then to the max, which is, you know, just push yourself as far as you can possibly go. That's kind of a storytelling thing as well, because great storytelling, and this is sort of formulaic, but in feature film writing, where you really feel for a character is when they get pushed to the limit of human experience. And it doesn't have to mean like they get kind of beaten up physically, but they can get beaten up mentally as well. But that idea of taking something and then pushing it further is fundamental to me. Like, there has to be a hook. There has to be an idea in a YouTube video. You know, you see the thumbnail, the title, that gets you in. But how you take that, push it up, push it in a different direction you're not expecting, push it up again, and then go even further just when you're not expecting it. That for me is, if there's a formula for what we do, it's that. It's like you just don't know where we're going to go with it, and it keeps reversing on you and changing direction until you're like, oh my God, they did what? And so that's why Based AF. So Based AF is, at the moment, it's a new YouTube channel, but the idea is for it to become a media company that really finds its home in the metaverse, because it's a massive space. It's a new space. It's a new niche. There's not a lot of content out there which is really sitting within it. And there's zero content that will be doing what I'm doing in it. So you tend to find there's like some, you know, newsletters. I noticed Metaproof is a sponsor of your newsletter. And, you know, there's opportunities for businesses. You know, you could be the morning brew of the metaverse. That's out there. It's up for grabs. Someone's going to capture that. But I think there's a different way to spin this, which is young people don't know what the metaverse is. They don't care, but they can recognize, if you care about it, that there's something that they might want to pay attention to. And I think that's what's so exciting about YouTube as it is now, is that there are niches that no one ever thought would be entertaining, that have huge audiences. It's like just weird gardening channels and carpentry channels. If you're enthusiastic about something and you care about it, other people will feel that, and they'll want to go on the journey with it, even if they don't necessarily like what it is you're doing. Whereas I feel like a newsletter, you've got to be invested already. You've got to be in that circle. And I don't think, for me, that's the right approach for us. We need to tell stories that have a more kind of general, human, universal thing. But in the middle of that, our focus, if you want to call it that, is the metaverse. And so we can start to claim that piece of the story. So that's what Based is about. We have a PFP collection called the Based Heads. And the reason we have that PFP collection is because we need a motivated and armed core of super fans, because they need to do one job for us. If we want to scale up and get big and start to people to take notice of us, we need them to do one thing: press play and then walk away. That's the meme. Because basically, if you watch a video and let it play to the end, the YouTube algorithm goes, "Oh, look at that. They watched all the way to the end. There must be something there. Let's send it to other people." So if we have that, and that's why we say press play, walk away. So you don't click off or you don't get bored. You just like press play and walk away and let it play out to the end. That will do a lot for us. We also kind of want to try and understand how you could create what we call the third pillar of the creator economy. So like the creator economy is build an audience, monetize that audience. And there are some brands that have done this insanely well. But it always sits a little uneasily with me. It's like, I'm serving you content for clicks. So it's an ad-based business like Morning Brew, and it's like just massively click-based and just doesn't feel quite right. YouTube is basically a click-based business as well. But, you know, we're seeing creators that are returning value back to the people that watch the videos in various different ways. It tends to be in kind of crass giveaways or big spectacle things. But I feel like there's, within Web3, within NFTs, there's the mechanism to do it in a more sustainable way and a more interesting way. And that's why we wanted to have a collection from the jump that was with us on that journey. So the two things went together. And we also think, like, honestly, if a content creator in this environment is doing the right work and has an NFT attached to it, the value of the two things should rise as the clout rises. Like, it's a clout business. You have an audience, you have more attention. The NFT itself should go with it. It should. Now, whether it does or not, I don't know. If a Jake Paul comes along and says, here's an NFT, it always feels like it's just another piece of merch. But given that we're building the two things simultaneously together, then it should. So the base heads will have their own lore, their own storylines, but those storylines will mix and mingle with the storylines in the based AF content. Sometimes it'll be short form, because short form is basically going to give us essentially a lab to experiment with formats. But, you know, we can have a character, you know, giving you information from Trashland, which is our kind of pseudo metaverse. And we can also experiment with virtual production using mocap and Unreal Engine, all these other kind of things in short form, because we don't have to produce an entire video. That's really exciting. But we can also do things like, you know, we do an event in a metaverse, like in VR chat, for instance, and our base heads will be able to join us as their base heads because we've given them the model to do so. Like, if something happens in the metaverse and nobody's there, who cares? Like, you need to have that audience to come with you. So there's lots of different things we're experimenting with. And there's a lot of things we're being challenged by as well, because shooting video for me is pretty straightforward now. I know how to do it. I know so many different ways to do it, so many different styles to sit within, you know, different types of storytelling, whether I shoot objectively wide or come in close like we saw. But suddenly when you're producing work in the metaverse, you need to know Unity. You need to have a team that can build your environments in Unity. You need to be able to test them and test the functionality. There's a whole bunch of skill sets that are like, we're acquiring them and learning how to manage our ambition in terms of what we want to do, because every single thing we come up with ends up being 10 times as much work as we expected. If we shoot video, everything we come up with is 10 times less work than it would be for anybody else, just because, you know, we know how to do that. So that's kind of what we need to do at the moment. But there's no doubt that the freedom to work within a virtual world, the freedom to create within Unreal Engine, for instance, the freedom that the mocap studio itself will allow us to, you know, animate within, so we can take a character and just perform it live. That's really exciting. And then that live component where, you know, we can be in an environment, we can have 3 or 4, 5 people simultaneously in that environment, acting, interacting with props and a digital camera. That's really exciting. But then it gets even wilder, because then you have things like Houdini, that magical 3D software that can be plugged into Unreal Engine as well. So we can trigger extremely complex events using MIDI or a controller of some sort, but live. And then the really crazy bit, like all this programmability, this pipeline right at the back end can be ChatGPT and AI. So it can be feeding things in real time in response to prompts from the chat. So the chat could be just programming stuff in that's changing the environment around us in real time. You just go, well, that's exciting. And so that's why, we need a team that can handle all those different pieces of the puzzle and that understand that. But, based fundamentally is a metaverse native project. And if that's the case, then the work we produce should feel like it came from the metaverse. Even if it's live action, it should always feel like it was produced here. And that's why we need to have this technology component to it as well.
I mean, obviously amazing, but is there an analogy for what you guys are doing and building? It's hard to describe, especially when the metaverse itself is, for most people, a nebulous concept. Even for myself, it's kind of nebulous. It's kind of like a more digital future, virtual reality, mixed reality, AR, etc. Like, if you're forced to make an analogy of, we are the, I don't know, Mr. Beast of the metaverse or whatever, like what would that be?
Well, I wouldn't be so crass as to compare myself to Mr. Beast. Oh, yes, I would. I absolutely would, because he's taught us so much. And it's fun that people have fixated on Mr. Beast, because I think in terms of YouTube, we have peaked Mr. Beast. He's like, he'll still grow, but that Mr. Beast era is done. Again, I read your recent newsletter and you're talking about he'll be the richest guy in the world. I think that's possible, but it depends on him being a really good businessman. And I think the way YouTube is going now, people have gotten bored of the spectacle at all costs, shouty thing. And there's more storytelling driven content being consumed, but there's an audience for all of it. But nonetheless, Mr. Beast is an apt comparison, because you're thinking about something which can grow monstrously and where the stories can be whatever you want them to be. For me, honestly, the way I look at it is, there's a new kind of broadcast landscape, if you want to call it, for me, where stories can be told and consumed. That is the metaverse. And it will be a storytelling environment, because it will leak into everything. And it could be an AR, it could be VR, who knows? But it inherently is adding a layer of storytelling to the world around us. And how immersive you want to be in that doesn't matter. So for me, I go back to 1981, when a scrappy cable channel started up and it was only showing music videos. It was, of course, MTV. And it took everything we know about TV and just said, nope, we're going to do it differently. And we're going to do it in the way that makes sense for the people who are actually going to consume it. And it completely changed television forever. Like, all the reality TV formats that are big now and that the likes of Airac are using come from MTV. Like, if you look at the way 90% of YouTubers think about retention, all of it came from Jackass. It's nuts. Like, Jackass, what do you think of when you think of Jackass? Hi, my name is Johnny Knoxville, and this is that's YouTube right there. But they were so far ahead of their time. That idea of just jumping straight into it and not having a big setup and everything else, and just getting straight into the fun, that's what works. And so for me, if you had to tie me down and say, what are you? I would say we are aiming to be the MTV of the metaverse, which is very simple, because it tells you it's entertainment. It tells you it's going to be youth culture, and it probably tells you it's going to be a barrel load of fun too. But it's actually apt, because I think the story of the metaverse is so big. There are so many verticals that can be placed on top of it, that for us to think of ourselves simply as a channel that does a thing isn't enough. We need to think of ourselves as a network in which there are a bunch of different channels. Some of them may be specifically targeted at kids. Some of them may be specifically targeted at the parents of those kids. Some of them may be specifically targeted at businesses, etc., etc., etc. But we have to start from a place of mass appeal, which is based AF right now, and all the fun stuff we're covering, which is very consumable and very fun and a bit silly. And as you rightly said, nobody really knows what the metaverse is. And for us, that's great, because the uncertainty means we can tell any kind of story we want, and it's still good.
All right, so tell me about the base heads. Like, tell me, What are they? When are they launching? What do they do, etc.?
Base heads. There are 10,000 of them. People are looking at me going, you sure 10,000? Like, yeah, if we're going to get to 1 million subscribers plus, 10,000 isn't enough. So it's where we've got to start. They are coming out, and where are we now? It's Wednesday. They will be going out Friday. So we are releasing a trailer today for the base heads.
Wait, so sorry, what time Friday? I'll try to release this by Friday. What time?
So I think it's midnight, our time here.
Okay, and you're in Europe. Okay, yeah. Cool.
So the base heads they live in Trashland, which is our vision of the metaverse, because we believe that the metaverse is just a repository for terrible ideas, some of which may stick, some which may not, and it's kind of a wasteland out there. So that's the metaphor. They have had ears drilled into their heads forcibly and tails fitted to make them more like kind of animals and give them better listening so they can hear when something's happening out in the metaverse. And we are basically going to be granting them special access to drops that we will create along the lines of what Mischief has done with kind of special art drops with physical items. So with Fraz Cola, for instance, we're going to do a physical Fraz drop, which will have an NFT attached to it. Only base heads can get those. We're also going to be doing specific activations in metaverse virtual worlds. Which ones those are, it's still up in the air. Some of them work better than others. But we're going to be doing one called Manhunt, which is basically a hide and seek game where you have to try and find me in a virtual world, and whoever finds me wins. Insert prize here. But we know there's probably going to be a Bored Ape as one of the prizes, so it's not too shabby. It's like you're looking at Mr. Beast here for that kind of thing. So those are the kind of things. You'll also get to kind of vote on thumbnails, A/B testing on that, what titles we use. We'll basically say, like, you know, if we have a sponsor that approaches us, we'll allow base heads to vote on whether that sponsor is a good fit or not. We'll also open up our YouTube stats to our base heads so they can see exactly what's going on, how things did, and give them a chance to feedback on that. And we'll also give them 3D models of the characters at a later date. Obviously, people are expecting airdrops and in real life events and all these kind of things. Like, I don't think that matters anymore. It's kind of expected. We will do it. But the thing that matters is you get to grow the value of your asset with a content creator from the get-go. And I don't think that's ever been done before in this way. So if you believe in the value of the content that we make and you believe it's good, we are going to continue making it and probably get a lot better at it. And the things that we've got planned and the ambition of what we've got planned is chunky. We're not going to be interested in 100,000 subscribers. It's got to be 1 million plus for this to really make any kind of sense. So we need help getting there. And like I said, some of the things that we've cooked up, we just go, wow, can we do that? And the answer is, if you say it out loud, you'll probably do it, which is why we just have to say things out loud, put them on the board. It's like, it's going to happen. So the first thing to look out for is the trailer. The trailer is dropping today. Today is Wednesday. And the trailer is really important. We released a sizzle reel a couple of days ago, which gave you a sense of the tone, the feel, the scope of what we've been up to. And hopefully people realize that this feels like a YouTube channel. This feels like a bunch of people I want to follow. The trailer does something very different. It basically sets the stall out for what the IP of the base heads could be. One of the big challenges we've seen in the last 12 months is, like, what is the value of IP? Do we do CC0? You know, what is it? Does it any of it matter? The Bored Apes changed the game by saying you have the rights to use this IP however you want. I don't think most people know what to do with that. And I don't know if they're good enough business people to do it a good job of it anyway. But when I look back at last year and I look at the projects that did well are the ones that did content really well. And if they didn't do content really well, they hired or they attracted people who did. So Yuga is the perfect example of this. They attracted influencers and content creators all over the world, Snoop, Eminem, you name it. And they were all in it. And you've got these amazing power creators working for the brands. There was constantly something new, constantly a new piece of content from all over the place, feeding the Yuga brand. We can't do that because nobody can do that. Yuga did it. They were the first. You can't copy that. So what we can do is lean into what I'm good at, which is content creation. And I can do it every day, all day, and I won't get bored because I love it. And that's the plain simple truth of it. I cannot stop making things. I have to. It's an addiction. It gets me into trouble, but like I love it. And I will sit and watch a piece of work that I've done over and over and over, like the scissor reel, because I love it. And so why would I? No, that's what you want to see. The people who are the best place to make use of our IP, that's us. If you want to see what the IP is capable of, that's us. So when we set out to do a trailer for the Baseheads, we wanted to show the community what a fleshed out realization of this IP looks like. So we shot a horror film trailer. We made it look like a horror film trailer. We spent a good amount of time figuring out what that would look like and how it would come across. But we wanted to tell a story, and we wanted to show people, holy shit, this could be a feature film. And there it is. Because that's, for me, where the IP comes alive. You know, other people, it might be books or cartoon or a game, but for us, it's film, it's narrative. So we need to lean into the thing. And it's live action, because so many of the projects that had come out had been doing these incredible Unreal Engine based, you know, trailers in 3D and everything else. And that's fine, but I don't understand why an NFT has to be animation. So do the hard thing. We did live action. We brought our characters to life and we put them on a set, and we shot a horror film trailer because we wanted to show people what that could look like, because I think that will stand out. So the market will have to decide whether that's something that they respond to, but it looks dope. It looks really, really good. So I'm excited for people to see it.
That's awesome. All right. So let's dream.
Let's dream.
What is 10 years out? You know, what does Based AF look like? You have 20 YouTube channels and you're also making TikTok and you're doing, you know, like what does it look like 10-year grand vision?
10-year grand vision, we own the story of the metaverse. Hands down. When you think about the metaverse, you will think Based. And that means that we need to build a media brand that has a footprint in all the different verticals that are possible for this. I mean, that's a big ambition, but I don't see why we shouldn't be thinking like that, because this is the crazy thing. The metaverse is a niche right now. It's tiny, and yet it's the biggest story around. And that's why it's kind of crazy for me to think like this, but Based could be inserted into all these different verticals. And again, I use the Morning Brew comparison. You know, they did, 70 million in ad revenue last year. That's incomprehensible to me. How did they do that? And it's, you know, they have all these different sub brands and everything else, but it's such a great example of how a simple newsletter can really cut through. And I think we have, you know, a different opportunity here. But again, thinking about what the metaverse is. And also, again, when I looked at Metaproof and I looked at all the different newsletters, I think they're doing it too soon. I think you focus on one vertical and make it really work. But it's definitely the opportunity is there to be seized. And I think what we also should be known for is empowering other creators to dream, to express themselves as well. There's an old model in YouTube, which is you had these collectives of channels, and they were always terrible. But I think there's a version of this which can be powered by Web3 primitives that can be much more holistic and allow different content creators to sit under an umbrella that we've created and really kind of find their niche audience within that. Because I'm very, very well aware of just how broad the metaverse is and how quickly it can become diluted and unfocused. So thinking about that is a crucial thing. We'll have a line of toys for sure. My kids will demand that. But beyond that, no, I think that the grand vision is we need to own the story of the metaverse.
That's awesome. All right. So, you know, we've been talking about media, content, blockchain, NFTs, et cetera. I just think that there's just an incredible opportunity to combine all this together, which is exactly what you're doing. And if you look at the PFPs, as we call them, that have been most successful, or the NFT products that have been most successful, they're media companies. These are companies that are selling a story and some sort of brand. And you know, what do you get when you buy a clone from Artifact? Like, I don't know, it's like cool, and you get some airdrops and some special stuff. What do you get when you buy a Bored Ape? Like, I don't know, it's cool, and you get some airdrops and, you know, some other cool things. But at the end of the day, I think that the media and entertainment industry is going to be radically impacted by NFTs specifically, but also like a ton of other technologies. So I guess just focusing now on, media, entertainment, and blockchain NFTs. What do you see happening there? Like, what is the opportunity?
Well, I'm trying to live that opportunity myself because I I know that we can build a world and build brands within that world that have traction and interest in house, create the mythology around those without having to wait for somebody else to do it. That's slightly different to how other projects are set up. I was listening to a podcast the other day, some really smart marketers who were trying to define what makes an amazing cult brand, and they were looking for examples. And I was just out of nowhere, they said Doodles is an example of a cult brand, and I can kind of see it. Like, there's a few different attributes to this. You need to have a common enemy, or a perceived enemy. In our case, it's Mark Zuckerberg, obviously, but there will be others. And then, you need to have a series of rituals, that define the sort of membership of the cult. And the cult doesn't have to be a bad word; it often is. But this idea that you have a reason to go do something regularly, like what could be more of a reason than sitting down to watch a video together, or going and watching a video, going and watching a piece of content? That's what we're hoping to establish with what we're doing. So there's a great opportunity for NFTs to become cult brands as opposed to, mega brands in the normal context. And maybe Doodles is on their way to doing that. I definitely think about that stuff a lot in terms of what we're doing. Like, we have an opportunity to be a cult brand. And at a certain point, cult brands become mainstream brands and they lose some of that edge. But at the moment, that'll be where we hang our hats. And that's exactly what we've got to do. We've got to find a way to cut through the noise. And there's an amazing YouTuber called Nico Omelama who has done exactly that. He's the perfect example. And if you haven't seen his videos, go and watch either the one where he finds...
Sorry, his name is...
He's called Nico Omelama. But
okay.
if you there's one video where he pranks the most racist man in America. And then there's one where he finds a way to get into the KSI boxing match dressed as a bottle without KSI realizing. And it's just incredible. And he has this, his community is called the NDL, and he has them all kind of pranking racist or far right groups all over the world. And it's really impressive. He's very, very exciting YouTuber. So I think there's an opportunity for NFT communities to do that. I think there's a lot of garbage out there that doesn't even know that it's garbage, but is hoping that the answer will manifest itself. Because I think, what happened a lot was somebody did something, and mostly it was Yuga, and then it was Azuki, or it was whoever. And then everyone went, that's it. Let's copy that. That's what we got to do. Let's just copy that. And that's the fastest way to go nowhere, I think. So, NFT projects have got to stand by the things that are good and forge their own paths, even if it's unpopular in the short term. And even if that means the floor price goes down, I think you've got to roll the dice and be innovative and different in whatever way you can be. For us, that doesn't necessarily mean technically being innovative, but it definitely means being innovative in the way that we connect with our community and use, for instance, in our case, content to drive the conversation. I'm a little muddy on where this goes long term. I think everyone was expecting to see PFPs die. I just don't think they will. I think they're too fun, and there's too much of a sense of a need to belong for people when they find a great community. It's very hard for them to leave that. Again, cult brands, it's tough to leave a cult because it fulfills needs in your life that were unfulfilled elsewhere. And, when we live increasingly digital lives, and that's where we spend our time, then those communities and where we hang out and who we chat to and how we talk, they are part of those rituals. GM is a ritual. So I'm excited about all that stuff. But again, I think, looking at traditional media, to Hollywood, these kind of things, they're going to stumble over their feet if they try and just bolt NFTs on to what they're doing. And a lot of them are coming in very kind of sensibly and slowly. And I also think that's the wrong approach. I think you just got to jump in and be brash and do something. Like Cock Punch is a good example of someone who just came in and was brash and did things, in his own way. I don't really like the podcast particularly, but I respect the way he did it for sure.
Okay, so yeah, I think that speaking of culture really quick, I think it should be the objective of every founder to create a cult, and it's funny that people denote it to something negative, because oftentimes like normal media, it's there's a connection there is negative. But in my mind, like, no, like you want to make a cult. Like I am in a cult, you are in a cult, like crypto, Web3, metaverse, like that is a cult. And anyway, so I think that I'm pro cult is basically what I'm saying. And then in terms of how
we'll just clip that bit out and just post it
I am pro cult
next to the Moonies.
Yeah, it's perfect. And in terms of media, entertainment, and then blockchain NFTs, I just see now is the ultimate period for content creators and media creators and entertainment, whatever, to monetize their creations through NFTs. I see it as like, okay, you can access a global audience. Anyone can pay in crypto, so it's really easy for them to pay to actually pay. It's like an official collectible asset from your favorite brand or IP, right? Like if Harry Potter launched today, and they launched some official Harry Potter collectibles at launch of Harry Potter, oh my god, that would be incredible. And those super fans turn into ultra fans over time, as they're given access to a private Discord channel, as they get access to J.K. Rowling to chat with her or whatever. So I feel like we're in like the golden era of IP, media, entertainment. And then my next question I want to talk to you about is AI, because obviously in the past, I don't even know, like 6 months, I feel like we've gone through a revolution in AI, specifically around content creation. It's funny that everyone was like, oh, AI is going to take away the truckers' jobs and the plumber and whatever. It's all going to be done by robots and AI. Turns out that, they said it's like artists are the last people, like they're going to always have their jobs. It's kind of inverse now, where like artists and creatives are their jobs aren't threatened in my mind. I feel like they're empowered through AI. But it's funny how that narrative switched so quickly. But in your mind, how is this AI content media revolution changing you and your business?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because you kind of want to resent it and push it away, but then you realize like so much of how we do things is powered by AI. So for instance, if I just move into the camera, I stay in focus. That's a magic trick. That's AI, people, right there. Like I love that thing. Like if I don't have to focus now, and I can trust that the guy behind the camera is going to get most of it in focus, that's made my life a lot easier. That's AI. So the problem, I think, is that what's being spat out by AI right now is alarmingly entertaining, and that's problematic, because we think of human beings as being the entertainers. I don't think anybody cares anymore, particularly below a certain age. They just want to be entertained. They want to have their time diverted. If they can pick up a phone and look at something rather than having to wait in a line, they will. So where it comes from doesn't really matter. I don't really see it as a challenge to what I'm doing, because I don't think an AI can parse everything that's ever been created and come up with what I come up with, unless it went through all my videos. Then maybe it could, but I think I'm still in a place where I can move away from that. And then, with AI art, you can tell it's AI. It all tends to kind of feel and look the same way. That'll change, it'll develop, of course. And then ChatGPT obviously is incredibly interesting, the way it can write code and come up with things. So what we're thinking of is like, well, how do we plug that into, for instance, scripting Unreal Engine environments and changing them on the fly, or having a routine that can be prompted by people in the chat. That's really interesting, and there's no limit to what that could do. And when you understand, the pipeline can go from different programs to different programs, and it can filter through, and suddenly you're in this environment where you have no idea what's going to happen, and you get these happy accidents. Well, that's great. And I think that's inspiring, and it should, in some way, it should kick people out of the habit of simply either copying somebody else or looking for the YouTuber that has the answer to their problem, or just looking for the easy solution. Like, here's the filter. This is how these are the 5 rules. Okay, if I follow those 5 rules, then I'm good. It might make them look at that in a different way, or it might go the opposite direction, which is it just gives everyone the answer straight away. I feel like that's really, really bad. Like people should struggle and should fail and have to figure stuff out for themselves. But do they want to? I don't know.
You could make the argument though that like, like man, people don't even have to learn how to ride horses now. They just get in their car and they just press on the gas and it's so easy. So it's I think that people always have those concerns, but yeah, like calculators. I'm sure there's pushback from calculators. I would imagine not positive, but
yeah. I mean, the sort of dystopian vision of the metaverse is this thing where you've got a headset on and you never disconnect. That will be a life choice for some people. That's not for me to say that's good or bad, but it will be a life choice. And, stuff being served to you by robots will be a life choice. People may not want to be physical in any way, shape, or form at all. They might just want to be plugged in with tubes and, up in wherever. That's a life choice. I think it's more indicative of the fact that the human race is evolving and will rapidly evolve into different kind of, I'm not sure what the right word to call them is, but like different branches of the human species, some of which will be more or less kind of integrated with cybernetics, some of which will be more or less integrated with AI. It's inevitable at this point. And so basically what you're seeing is a new set of hierarchies in terms of class. So people who have AI embedded in their brains will be more intelligent than the people who don't. It just will go, without saying. And if you're, a networked human, you will inevitably be superior in some way. And that has some pretty radical implications for everything. Equally, if we, as seems likely, are going to be able to, prevent death within this century, then, travel to distant planets becomes possible. And so suddenly we can become an interplanetary species. This is just where, if you think about science fiction or you think about logically where things go, that's the thing. So getting worried about that is a little pointless, I think, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. And so you might as well enjoy the time you have right now and make the most of it, because, otherwise you're just going to be scared, and there's no need for that.
All right. So last question before the closing questions. Are we headed or are we in the golden age for IP and content creation? And the reason I ask that is because we have AI for content creation, we have NFTs for monetization, we have these platforms that are highly accessible like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram to distribute that content. Are we headed to this is going to be amazing? We're going to have a boom of just incredible content coming down the pipeline soon?
Well, my theory in all this is this: the more stuff that is out there, the more chance something good will get made. The challenge is then, how does that good thing that gets made get seen? But then, I look at what's on YouTube and some really good stuff. Like it isn't the cesspit it used to be. Like some really powerful creative minds on there who are turning down TV deals because they're not as good as being a YouTuber. That's pretty wild. Normally it would be the other way around. They're like, TV comes calling, yes, I want to be on TV because you have the access, the resources, the money, and you have the network. But they don't need it anymore. So in that sense, it's still going to require people to have their wits about them and still be good entrepreneurs to take advantage of all of this, because it's not just going to be a button that you can press and suddenly you can exploit that opportunity. So I guess like with everything, there will be winners and losers, and those who are able to navigate this and understand the opportunity in front of them, like the metaverse, for instance, will be the big winners. But I think you're absolutely right that in 10 years' time, the world is going to look significantly different. And I think anybody who thinks they know what that is definitely wrong. 100% wrong. It's going to be, like you said, 6 months of AI and look where we are. Like imagine 10 years of that. I have no idea. All I hope is that some AI figures out a way to save the planet, because I don't think we are capable of it ourselves.
Oh man, we could talk about AI for a long time. I have some weird theories. Anyways, all right, let's jump into the closing questions. All right. What are you bearish on? It could be anything.
Okay, I'm bearish on Yuga Labs.
On Yuga?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, tell me why.
They raised too much money.
They raised too much money. Huh. That's an interesting problem to have. I wish I did that.
At too high a valuation. Historically, companies that have done that, it doesn't work out well. And I think the stakes are insanely high for them. If the other side is a bust, bad news. I know that's a contrarian opinion, but at the moment I'm bearish on them. Despite despite the execution and everything else, I just think that.
What's your exit?
Yeah, what's your exit?
How do you? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It has to be $100 billion.
Exactly. And
right.
Are they that good? Yeah.
Interesting. Very, 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 very good one. All right. What are you bullish on? You can't say like based, obviously.
No, of course
something
not.
different.
Of course not.
Okay.
I'm bullish on fashion. So digital fashion, massively bullish on. I mean, I excessively bullish, I would say, and I have been for a couple of years now. Yeah.
Okay, so explain.
So it's a couple of things. It's the fashion industry is huge, as we know, massive turnover, massive opportunity. It speaks directly to this most important thing, which is your identity. Like what you wear expresses who you are. What I love about it is it can be physical and digital. So if a digital garment does really well and people want a physical, then the supply chain, everything that's needed to deliver that is already in place. It's sustainable. So it's much better for the environment. It offers jobs because, people who wouldn't necessarily be able to access it can be doing things like creating a pattern. There's micro industries that can grow up around it. The last thing is speaking to my daughter about Roblox and about how she uses Roblox. Every day we have a conversation about it. Every day she's like, Daddy, can I speak to you about Roblox? And I tell you stuff about Roblox. She's obsessed. The most important thing for her is what she wears in Roblox.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right. What is your favorite YouTube video?
Okay. Good question. I think I would have to say Nico Milano's KSI video. It's glorious.
Wait, and that's the one where he dresses up as a drink and goes to his boxing match?
He's basically he's a YouTube prank artist who has so much more game than that makes it sound. He's phenomenal. He's able to dress up kind of deep political issues in ways that are just not expecting, and cut to the chase in a way that's really gentle but also quite cutting. So he always used to try and break into boxing matches like KSI or Jake Paul, and he would always get stopped. So he comes up with this plan to dress up as KSI's energy drink, but as a massive bottle, and then get into the ring that way. And they managed to convince KSI's manager that this was legit, and they got another YouTuber to build the bottle or pretend to build the bottle. And then it's this whole story about how he does it and how he gets in there, but it's just like, he's a genius storyteller. Doesn't sound like much, but like when you see how he puts it together, you're just hooked. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. All right. What do people misunderstand about you?
They think I'm cool. I'm not.
That's what your wife said to me.
That's what your wife said to me. She said, "You're so cool. Do your kids know how cool you are?" I'm like, they know I'm not cool.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, why do you think you're not cool? Just why is that?
Because it's not for me to determine whether I am or not. And as long as I don't think I am,
that answer means you're cool. No, you're cool, no. Robin. You're cool. You're cool.
Fine, I'll take it.
All right. What was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, biggest failure was the feature film we made. I got cowardly on certain decisions, didn't push for things that I should have pushed for, and ultimately just didn't have enough. Didn't give the best of myself. Was too scared.
Basically. Would you say that kind of changed your course of your outlook on content creation and basically your life as a whole?
Yeah, maybe when you put this thing up on a pedestal and you say this is we do this and it's done. Maybe I think right now I'm honest in the way I do things. Like when I come up with an idea, I don't sugarcoat it to please anyone. I just go, we're going to do this. And some people may think it's really stupid. I don't care, because it makes me happy to do it and it feels like the right thing to do. And sometimes you look at stuff and go, that could have been better. But sometimes, most of the time we look at it and go, yeah, we really took a risk on this one, but it's so paid off. So the right way to go.
That's awesome. All right. Last question. How do you define success?
That's such a great question. Do you mean for myself or for Based?
for yourself?
Well, let me give it some context. It is my profound belief that 99.9% of, like, particularly NFT projects, don't have a clear picture of what success would be for them. They can't define it. They don't know, because nobody really knows. They don't know what a scaled up version of a thing, and that's why they copy Yuga. For us, it's really clear. It's subscriber count. That's it. Because that defines your audience. Like, your audience is the thing in which you will then be able to do all the other work on. If that doesn't work, or it isn't there, there is nothing else. So for us, let's say 1 million subscribers in 12 months, that's success. For me personally, not selling out, keeping to what I'm doing and not letting pressure, external pressure, start to change me in terms of the way I approach things. I think I'm in a good place now where I'm old enough and I've, my kids are growing up, and I'm sort of, like I said, I'm honest about what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and know how to have fun with it. And I'm still learning. That's the crazy thing. Like, even after all this time, I still find new stuff. We got a young kid working with us, and he challenges me on stuff all the time. I'm like, you're wrong. And then I go, but what if he isn't? And who am I to tell him he's wrong? And then you go, yeah, well, that's cool. That's a different way of doing things. Ace, cool, let's do it. So, that's also another part of success, is not getting bored or not feeling like you're not progressing. I hate that. I just want to keep improving and moving on with things.
Amazing. Robin, thank you so much for coming on. This was an awesome conversation. Do you want to plug anything before we sign off?
My own mouth to stop talking, because I talk a lot. Now, obviously, I want to plug the Baseheads. I want to plug Based AF, our YouTube channel, because we need subscribers. It's hell starting a new channel from scratch. You feel like such a little tiny, like, pipsqueak. We got to 100,000 plus subscribers on the Define, and now I'm starting at 0 again. I just feel like such a loser. But if anyone can subscribe, that would be really much appreciated. Come on, guys, hit that bell, hit the subscribe button.
Awesome, man. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.